Hello, this is the Debka Files. I'm Gabrielle Weiniger with exclusive news, political insight and regional analysis from the Middle East and around the world. Coming up on the programme this week. A surprise shake-up in Saudi Arabia as princes, ministers, generals and businessmen are detained in what many are calling a power play by King Salman. Lebanon's Prime Minister Saad Hariri resigns, citing a plot to assassinate him as he flees to the Saudi capital. And something for art lovers in the UAE as the Louvre Abu Dhabi opens its doors this week, bringing the famed name to the Arab world for the first time. Now to our top story. Saudi authorities have carried out a new wave of arrests targeting royals, ministers and high-ranking generals in an alleged crackdown on corruption. Billionaire investor Prince Al-Walid bin Talal was among 11 princes and more than 24 current and former ministers detained Saturday night in raids across the Saudi capital. Unclear so far what the procedures will be for dealing with those who have been arrested, whether assets will be frozen or handed over to Saudi authorities. Also on the blacklist, National Guard Chief Prince Mutab bin Abdullah, son of the late king. He's been replaced with Prince Khalid bin Ayaf. King Salman also ordered the formation of a new anti-corruption committee headed by himself. Some Saudi citizens backing the crackdown.
كل اللي صار أمس هذا إن شاء الله يكون بداية لما هو قادم بإذن الله من تصحيح للأخطاء ومن تصحيح للوزارات ومن تصحيح للإجحاف والظلم اللي ممكن يكون على عامة الشعب.
الفساد مفروض انه محارب من زمان، لان الفساد يعتبر الفساد انه هو اللي عطل تنمية المجتمع.
Now, the same night as the arrests, US Patriot missiles intercepted an Iranian-supplied Burkan 2H ballistic missile fired by Yemeni Houthi rebels at the King Khalid International Airport of Riyadh from northern Yemen. A reminder of the Saudi-backed war against the Iran-backed insurgents. Saudi Arabia on Monday closed all its borders with Yemen. Meantime, a senior Saudi prince was killed in a helicopter crash near the border with Yemen just a day after that major purge undertaken by the kingdom. Prince Mansour bin Mukrin Al Saud, the deputy governor of the Asir province that's on the Yemeni border, was traveling with 7 other high-level officials when the helicopter crashed. The cause of that crash so far unknown. Let's get more on all this now. We're joined by Debka File's own editor-in-chief, Giora Shamis. Giora, how much of what's happening is a crackdown on corruption, as the Saudi government says, and how much is an internal power play?
Well, you can divide it to two parts or points. There is the political side of it. They're trying to portray Prince Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, as a very strong, powerful person. But actually, he is not so strong. If he would be strong enough, there will be no purge. And if he is sort of forced to carry out such a big purge in Saudi Arabia, princes, ministers, business people, key business people, that say so, already hinting to sort of that he got some problem with these parts of the Saudi society.
I want to pick up on something you said there, Giora, about it being to do with business. Is this part of an economic transition? We've seen some of the most prominent businessmen being arrested. We've seen the impact this move has had on shares. What impact will this have on businesses, and how will investors be looking on? And the economic transition King Salman wants to undertake, what impact will it have on that?
There are fears that the anti-corruption purge will be speed up the phase of capital flight out of Saudi Arabia. Instead of bringing in money, the capital going to flight out, to go away. And that's a big problem, not only for Saudi Arabia, as it's a personal problem for MBS, that he actually, all his economical, business, financial planning about the Saudi future, it's sort of in danger.
And Saudi Arabia blaming Iran for the missiles fired at Riyadh Saturday night, saying that could be interpreted as, quote, an act of war. How will this impact relations in the region in light of their involvement in Yemen, in Syria?
Well, I don't think in Syria it's going to make any differences, because the Syria's situation is like this, that Saudis retreated and left Syria, and they have hardly any influence there. But in Yemen, that's going to have a big influence, and above all, it's not only Yemen, the situation in the Gulf itself. If the Saudis are now talking about reprisal, so sooner or later there's going to be a clash between Saudi whatever forces and Iranian forces in the Gulf. And that's another danger for world business and economy.
All right, good to get your thoughts there. Giora Shamis, Debka File CEO and Editor-in-Chief, thank you.
Thank you.
Lebanon's Prime Minister has resigned, accusing Iran and Hezbollah of plotting his assassination. Speaking in a televised broadcast from the Saudi capital, Saad Hariri said he would not be returning to Beirut for the time being. Here's a segment of that speech blaming Iran for spreading destruction across the region.
أشير وبكل صراحة ودون مواربة إلى إيران التي ما تحل في مكان إلا وتزرع فيه الفتن والدمار والخراب. يشهد على ذلك تدخلاتها في الشؤون الداخلية للبلدان العربية في لبنان وسوريا والعراق والبحرين واليمن. يدفعه إلى ذلك حقد دفين على الأمة العربية ورغبة جامحة في تدميرها والسيطرة عليها. وللأسف وجدت من أبنائنا من يضع يده في يدها.
Hariri's resignation comes just a day after meeting with Ali Akbar Veliati. He's a senior advisor on foreign affairs to Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Debka File's analysts asking if the Lebanese Sunni politician escaped an assassination plot by Iran and Hezbollah, why sit down with an Iranian official? Sources suggesting the army's joint military effort alongside Iran, Syria and Hezbollah against extremists on the Syrian-Lebanese border opened the door for Iran to gain an in into its strategic corridor via Iraq and Syria to the Mediterranean. This, added to Iran's grip on Beirut, as seen through the election of Christian President Michel Aoun, friend of Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah, has given the Shiite militia leeway to send troops to fight on the side of the Syrian regime. But Iran rejecting these accusations, blaming Hariri's departure on the United States and Saudi Arabia. Lebanese Shiite Hezbollah group, in return, blaming the kingdom for forcing Hariri to quit, calling for calm and to contain the political crisis.
هذا بيعطينا هذا المعطى أو هذه المعطيات بيعطينا استنتاج واضح وقطعي مو احتمال أن الاستقالة كانت قرارا سعوديا أملي على الرئيس سعد الحريري وأجبر عليه، وأن الاستقالة لم تكن نيته ولا رغبته ولا إرادته ولا قراره. نحن في حزب الله ندعو إلى ما يلي: أولا إلى الهدوء وإلى الصبر وإلى التريث بانتظار اتضاح الصورة والمشهد والأسباب الحقيقية، وبالتالي عدم الإصغاء إلى كل التكهنات والتحليلات والتهويلات والشائعات.
Nonetheless, after Hariri's resignation, Saudi Arabia persuaded Kuwait to call off a scheduled visit by the Lebanese president set to begin Sunday. Debka File sources saying Riyadh looking to pressure Aoun to quit his political pact with Hezbollah, saying they're looking to turn Lebanese politics around, forming a new pact between Christians and Sunni Muslims versus Shiites and Iran. In light of this, the kingdom has invited prominent Lebanese Sunni leader Ashraf Rifai from the northern town of Tripoli to come to Riyadh for talks. For more on this, let's bring in military historian and former deputy head of the National Security Council, Dr. Shaul Shai. Dr. Shai, thanks for being here on the show today.
It's my pleasure.
Why did the Lebanese Prime Minister resign? Is there evidence of an assassination plot, as Hariri has said?
If we look at the history, his father was assassinated by the Syrians and Hezbollah. And I think that from his point of view, this threat is a real one. But I think that the reason for the resignation is mainly based on the regional conflict between Saudi Arabia and Iran and the implementation of the same conflict within the Lebanese theater. I think that the significance of this step of Hariri is mainly to try to block at the last moment the growing Iranian influence in his country.
In that case, why would Saudi Arabia want Hariri out? It's one of its own men. Why would it want out the government in Lebanon?
I think that from the time that he was nominated to the position of prime minister, with the approval actually of Hezbollah, Hariri was forced to carry out politics that basically supported the growing influence of Hezbollah and their sponsors in Tehran. I think that this step will be a kind of a countermeasure. As I said before, maybe last moment countermeasure. I'm not sure that the results will serve indeed the Saudi Arabian goals, but it will in some way undermine the political stability in Lebanon and will make the way of Hezbollah to total dominance in this country maybe a little bit slower.
Talking of instability, the coalition government has now fallen. Is this the start of a new political crisis in Lebanon? How dangerous is the risk of instability now the government has no prime minister?
I think that in Lebanon, nomination of prime minister, it's a long process. We saw how much time it took to nominate Hariri with the approval of all the different parties with different interests. So there is no doubt that Lebanon is going to a period that will be problematic. And of course, Israel has to watch the situation in Lebanon very carefully because the situation is fragile, and of course it is totally connected with the regional situation, including in Syria and beyond.
So talking of that, where does this leave the country on the regional map? We've got Sunni Saudi Arabia and Shia Iran that's also buffeting Syria, Iraq, Yemen, Bahrain. Which way will Lebanon turn now?
I think that if I try to analyze the situation from the Iranian point of view, they are closer than ever before to achieve the strategic goal of the formation of what King Abdallah called the Shia Crescent. I mean, an Iranian dominance over the Middle East, starting in Iran, Iraq, Syria with Assad regime, and of course Lebanon with dominant Hezbollah. They are very close to it now, and they will do almost everything to achieve it.
Okay, Dr. Shaul Shai there. Thank you for this and your insight on this topic.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, in Syria, missiles fired by Russian-made air defense systems have missed, hitting Israeli Air Force planes. The first on October 16th, when Israeli planes flew over Lebanon, and the second on Wednesday, November 1st, when IAF jets reportedly struck Syrian military targets near Homs. Debka analysts now saying these incidents give experts the first glimpse into some of the aerial tactics employed by Israel. and also some of the operational flaws inherent in the Russian-Syrian air defense network across Syria. Russia claims the IAF flight on October 16 over Lebanese skies went undetected as the command center in Latakia heard of the jets too late to activate any anti-air missile. This shows that while their three-tiered air defense system can respond to attacks from planes and missiles approaching Syria, it can't detect when missiles are aimed at Syrian targets from outside its borders, such as over Lebanon or the Mediterranean. Debka sources saying the IAF using this flaw to bomb targets in Syria without risking being shot down or intercepted by Russian air defense batteries, knowing the Russian system cannot differentiate between the Israeli planes or identify which ordnance is being used. That's essential data for determining which air defense system must be used to activate a response. Nonetheless, a flaw in Russia's air defenses may not be the only reason the IAF is able to act inside Syrian airspace. Analysts suggesting the Russians may be turning a blind eye to their actions in Syria against Hezbollah. Meanwhile, a suicide car bomb exploded Friday at the Druze village of Hada on the Syrian side of the Golan Heights. This followed by heavy shelling which killed 10 villagers and injured another 30 opposite an Israeli army position on Mount Hermon, just 4 kilometers away from the Israeli border. The attack was claimed by the Syrian rebel group formerly known as Al-Qaeda's Nusra Front. The Israeli army attempting to restore calm after word of the massacre shot through the Druze villages on the Israeli side of the border, causing distress in Majd el-Shams, Massadeh and Bukata, where many Druze have relatives across the border with Syria. Some villagers attempted to cross the border in response.
أخوتنا في الجولان وطبعا ننقل الخبر لإخواننا في حضر إنه إحنا واقفين معهم من كل النواحي وبنطلب إحنا من دولة إسرائيل إذا بدها تحتل الحضر إحنا مستعدين نفوت إحنا جنود وبنخدم في جيش الدفاع مستعدين.
Israel now amassing its forces on the border, vowing to stand by the Druze community in the Golan and prevent Hada from falling into Syrian rebel hands. These pledges made during an emergency meeting at Julius on Friday. But Lebanese Druze leader Walid Jumblat urging it not to trust Israel, saying the Jewish state will betray them. Debka File analysts saying if the rebel assault on the Syrian village of Hada continues, the Israeli army may step in with air, tank and artillery support to save its inhabitants in view of this pact with the community in Israel. That leaves it open to being charged with directly interfering with the Syrian civil war. For now, though, rebel forces have pulled back from the city while Israeli forces remain on high alert. Now to Central and West Africa, where the US government has pledged $60 million to a UN-backed counter-terrorism force set up to tackle rebel groups in the troubled Sahel region. This after 4 US Special Forces troops on an anti-terror mission were killed in early October in Niger on the border with Mali, reportedly ambushed by 50 Islamic State fighters on their return to base. But the US Chief of Staff saying there's only limited information about what actually happened. US Africa Command officials adding that it is, quote, inappropriate to speculate on the incident. Here's that pledge from the US to the G5 Sahel force.
The United States is committed to stabilizing the Sahel region. We are proud to announce today that we plan to provide up to $60 million in bilateral assistance, which we will work with our Congress to identify to help stand up the joint force.
Now known as the Group of 5 Sahel Joint Force, the G5 Sahel is made up of Niger, Chad, Mali, Burkina Faso and Mauritania. It was launched in 2014. In line with a new French initiative, a 5,000-strong battalion of troops will be stationed in the region to fight against terrorists and insurgencies that spill across porous borders dividing the Sahel and North and Central Africa. These include Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb, who are king in Mali and challenged by ISIS, as well as Boko Haram in Nigeria and Chad. They're all bankrolled by instability and illicit activity, including arms, people and drug trafficking. But the UN have stopped short of offering a full mandate to the group, unable to bridge opposition from Morocco and Algeria. While Morocco has welcomed the French initiative offering military training and border security, Algeria has declined, Debka sources saying they've been sidelined by France for an important regional security role. Nonetheless, the Malian president welcoming the new pledge of funds and support to his country, where millions have been left at the mercy of climate and armed groups. Take a listen.
Et cerise sur le gâteau, il y a 2 jours, sinon hier seulement, nous avons appris que les lignes américaines avaient bougé un peu. Nos amis américains avaient consenti à mettre la main au dollar et que nous avions 60 millions de contributions en bilatéral. C'est heureux. Vous l'avez dit, je crois que dans tout cela, l'objectif c'est quoi? C'est la paix au monde mondial.
We'll be closely following that anti-terror force and any new developments in the Sahel as this military-first solution in this very complex region unfolds. For now, though, a roundup of this week's headlines you may have missed. The news in brief. Debka sources in Erbil revealing former president of Iraqi Kurdistan, Masoud Barzani, not ready to relinquish the reins of government, giving himself just 7 months to prepare for his comeback ahead of general and presidential elections in May and June 2018, respectively. The chief of the Jordanian royal court, Dr. Fayez al-Tawana, visited Damascus this week, taken to be an olive branch from King Abdullah to the Syrian ruler Bashar al-Assad. This as Russia officially received the first Jordanian ambassador in Moscow, a possible broker to the reconciliation. Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan has made a deposit for the purchase of Russian S-400 air defense systems, demanding early delivery plus the technology. Moscow has so far rebuffed Ankara on both demands, Turkey risking sanctions for being the first NATO member to shop for arms in Russia. The Ritz-Carlton in Riyadh became jail for some 11 Saudi princes and 38 government ministers arrested Saturday night on corruption charges. But it wasn't quite a home away from home, with all the hotel's phone lines cut off. The guests were forced to check out Sunday night, despite the hotel blocking off availability through till December. And French President Emmanuel Macron paid his first visit to the UAE Wednesday to cut the ribbon on the famed Louvre Museum's first outlet in an Arab land. For the next 10 years, 13 of France's top museums will lend works to Abu Dhabi for a maximum of 2 years each. The new museum currently has some 300 pieces on loan, including a self-portrait by Vincent van Gogh and work by Paul Gauguin and Leonardo da Vinci. Something very special there for art lovers in the UAE. That's it for this edition of the Debka Files. For more on stories you heard here and more, you can visit our website at debka.com. Until next week, goodbye for now.